social media and what we would call pseudo connection, where people kind of feel as if they're connected, even though they really truly aren't. You have this
Mm,
false sense of connection through social media, through seeing people's stories or seeing their Instagram, whatever. And it can sort of meet that need, even though it's not actually meeting it on a deep level. But then people are able to say, oh, I feel connected, even though they're really not. And just the way that social media kind of makes us all compare ourselves and live in this false reality. And there is a lot of vulnerability, but then there's also so much lack of vulnerability. And we see all these
mhm.
perfect lives, and that can lead us all to want to shut down more emotionally and not be vulnerable, right? So I think there's so many factors in today's society that are just causing more and more people to show up with avoidant attachment style.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think social media is such an interesting phenomena to understand, isn't it? Like we can look at it at a very basic level and just say, oh, we should all go off it. But the reality is it's so integrated to our everyday life. And you're right, like on one level, it is great for connection and people make connections maybe that they wouldn't have otherwise. Or, if they're not getting outside the house, at least they're interacting in some form. But I totally agree with you. The vulnerability in social media, it isn't that there isn't vulnerability. I think there is absolutely vulnerability in sharing your story or sharing your feelings in that space. But it's very different to the relationship where we have when we are with someone in a space together, sharing that vulnerable moment. And then I think the other part of it is like what we receive back from the other person, that obviously we can get validation, we can get likes on social media, but we're not getting that secure attachment connected response from the person that we're sharing this vulnerability with. I think it's fascinating, isn't it, to really try and unpack that and understand how that is starting to impact attachment styles and attachment behavior.
Yeah. You know this just like I do, that so much of feeling secure is about attunement and the
Mhm.
neurobiology of being in the presence of someone who is attuned to you emotionally, and that is biologically felt, right? Just
Mhm.
what you're talking about.
Mhm.
And we're not getting that via our phones.
It's interesting. I do, oh gosh, we could go on a whole tangent here just about this because obviously in the pandemic, you would have experienced the same thing. We had a psychology practice here where we obviously all went online and just try to understand the differences between the online therapy experience and the face-to-face therapy experience. And I think it is very different. Like if we're having that like we are now, like talking to each other and having those direct cues, like we can get some of that need met, but I don't think we can ever completely replace the experience of being physically with someone in a
It's
space
true.
together.
Yeah. Thinking about the work you do, we were talking about your in-person retreats that you do, and there's so much power in that of being in the room with people.
Talking about this idea of, we're talking about avoidant attachment and the idea of like hyper independence. And I think in today's society, hyper independence is really put on a pedestal. And I do wonder if that contributes to the increase in avoidant attachment that we're seeing, because it's become almost a badge of honor, isn't it? To not depend on anyone, to, be able to do it all on your own. And so I'm interested in hearing your thoughts and for you to share a little bit about the difference between those things, between hyper independence, interdependence, and codependency.
Oh, I love this question. Yes, hyper independence is I would say, in our society. It's very fashionable. And I think a lot of women in particular are becoming hyper independent. And there's reasons for that, right? I think more and more women having experienced maybe even being raised by single mothers or having models of relationships that were not healthy relationships, and kind of evolving into this place of, oh, we have to be hyper independent to get our needs met. So I think that there's more and more women who are showing up with hyper independence, whereas traditionally maybe in the past we saw that more with men. So it's really doesn't matter what gender you are now, avoidant attachment is showing up pretty equally in men and women, which was not the case before. And yeah, I think that as a society, we really value hyper independence and we encourage it, and we're more individualistic. Have you seen that trend on social media where it's like the woman and she says, I'm a strong, independent woman and I don't have to depend, I don't depend on no one or something, where it says, I don't depend on anyone. Anyways, and then it shifts to show, hey, I'm no one. And it's her partner. And he lists all the ways that she depends on him.
Yes, 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 I have.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
I love that trend because
Mm.
the reality is in healthy relationships, so interdependence, healthy relationships, we will depend on our partners. It's really healthy to depend on our partners. But the beauty of interdependence is we have to also know that we can depend on ourselves, right? This is where there's issues in codependency, where you are only depending on your partner or you're only depending on other people. You're outsourcing your emotional regulation. You're not learning how to regulate your own emotions. You're depending on others. So the beauty of interdependence is I know I can depend on you, I can depend on other people, and I can depend on myself. And that's at the core of healthy relationships.
That's such a fabulous explanation and so needed, because I do think that people still see interdependence as codependence. Like there is still a lot of myths out there and misunderstandings about the idea of being, as you said, like it's healthy to depend on our partners, to need our partners, and also to be able to depend on ourselves. But I think there is a lot of misconceptions out there around the idea that if you have needs, if you need your partner in some way, that is unhealthy. And we know that that's obviously not the case. In fact, it's the opposite of what is a healthy relationship.
Yes, we do need to be able to depend on people in our lives, right? And I think it's also in friendships and work relationships, and we have to be able to know that I can have needs and those needs can be heard and those needs can be met. That is part of a healthy relationship. And I think that people can be worried about being codependent or being too dependent. And really, it's about knowing yourself and learning how to trust yourself. And I'll go back to knowing how to also regulate your own emotions and calm your own nervous system so that when you are going to your partner, you can show up and ask for your needs to be met, hopefully in a securely attached way, and then your partner can hear you. I think we get into trouble when we don't have that self-trust and we can't depend on ourselves.